Welcome back to Mixed Media Creations with me, Creative Katie, Karen Burchill. Today it's a mixed media canvas tutorial. We're going to be using collage, stenciling, and a lot of problem solving. Follow me on Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe and please share the video with anyone that you think might enjoy it. So this weekend, my husband and I went for a walk at Bouchard Gardens and we saw this lovely magnolia tree, and I was really inspired by the pinks and violets and the greens in that picture. And so I came home and I pulled out some gel prints and deli collage papers, and in that pink tone and in green tone, as well as some napkins to bring in some of the script. And I was all ready to collage on this 8x10 canvas board. So here's the napkin, and I just took out the butterflies and the Eiffel Tower. And I really like that napkin, and I think I'll be looking for more of it. It's a great way of getting not only the script, but some texture. And this is, I think, is mulberry paper. It's fibrous, and it's just that right color of green. So other than trying to get rid of straight edges and kind of getting a good amount of this color on this background using the collage technique, I don't really have a plan of attack here. I just want variation, I want interest. I'm trying to use different gel prints and deli papers, different weights, because they all collage a little bit differently. I'm just having fun, and I'm so enjoying collaging in this way. I find it so incredibly relaxing. This napkin is absolutely gorgeous. It adds so much interest in the background. I have a whole box full of napkins, so in my effort to use my stash, that I pulled out some napkins, and that's why you're seeing me using them today. It has that lacy, and then has that brown, which was also in the magnolia picture. And I'm just gluing this down with gel medium. Now you might be thinking that this is an awful lot like the Joy canvas that I did previous, and you're not wrong. I started off with the same process. When I did the Joy one, I wanted to do a series of similar ones with different inspirational words and different focal images, different color schemes. And since the Joy one was such an easy creation, I was expecting this one to be as easy because I actually knew what I was doing. I had a plan for this. That isn't exactly how this played out. And if you watch this, you're going to learn maybe some of the things that might happen to you if you're trying to recreate either the Joy canvas or this one. And I can prevent you from having to do things a multitude of times. So when I choose the collage papers, I want, things that are the same, different tones of the same color, so darker ones. And every one of the gel prints or the deli papers that I painted on, they just have a different colors on them, and I like bringing in different patterns and different colors into the collage thing. So I'm additioning things here and there, and I can't really tell you why I put it from one place to another. And if I had really thought it out about where I was going to be putting the word, I may have changed things a little bit. But again, I will show you how to troubleshoot if something ends up in a place that you absolutely wish it wasn't. While I want to get a good amount of the colors on here, on the background, I know I'm going to be coming with some paint to fill in the gaps, as well as some stamps and stenciling to add even more interest to this. I find that I'm using, different sizes of ripped papers as well, and that just adds a little bit more interest to your background. Now, if I was doing this again, I wouldn't put that big strip of script down the middle. I would have some color intersecting and maybe rip that into two smaller pieces. Now, once you pick the colors, if it's scrapbook paper or whatever, then you want to match it to your paint colors. And any kind of paint goes. You can use craft paint, you can use your Liquitex Basics, your Golden. And if you're not sure if it's the right color, just do a swap or a test thing. I am using this violet colored by Liquitex, and I'll put the actual name in the description box below. But if you don't have the actual color, you can start playing around with color combinations, mixing. On the side there, I'm just showing you using my craft paint. I'm getting a little bit redder tone by mixing a purple and a red. So play around and see. So now I'm just adding some background stamps, and I'm using archival ink. It is the preferred ink, and it's permanent. This is a foliage cube that I got at Michael's. And if I can find it on Amazon, I'll put a link to it too, because it's one that's definitely gotten used. Now, since I was inspired by flowers, I am just putting a few flowers on here, even though I am not planning to actually recreate a magnolia blossom. Although you could definitely do that on this background if that's within your skill set. So now I'm just adding some of this green and the violet color, and with a palette knife. And for whatever reason, it's just wasn't going as well or as smoothly as I wanted. Now with the palette knife, you're kind of breaking up some of those hard edges, putting paint, where there's some white as well. And you can go up and down, you can go side to side. Really, it's up to you. Whatever's going to add interest to your background. And I'm diluting the paints and just painting that in, and you'll see me using the spray bottle, getting the color flowing. And again, I want different tones of this violet color and of the green color. If it was all the same one tone, it's very flat and boring. And I remember thinking at this point, it's not working the way I want it. Then I decide, I'm going to do some stamping with gold, and that is because of that script start part in the middle there from that napkin. It has that yellow tone to it, and I needed to bring some of that yellow into the rest of the canvas, and I really like the gold. This is a Crafter's Workshop stencil, and I've always just simply liked using the middle part, and it occurred to me that I can cut out that middle part. The one below is Peacock Feathers. There's another Crafter's Workshop stencil, and I'm going to combine those two stencils to make a dream catcher. And I'm going to put the circles along the right side. Remember, I want to make a series similar to the Joy canvas that I just did. Now I learned by using the Shimmery Goodness from the Crafter's Workshop, I love the iridescent pearlized look that that gave, but it did flatten a lot. It didn't give a whole lot of texture. And I wanted the top part of this dream catcher to have a little more textures than the feathers. So I'm using modeling paste here, and my plan is to go over that afterwards with the shimmery goodness so that it's higher in texture and it has that shimmery stuff. Now here I'm using the shimmery goodness from the Crafter's Workshop with this feather stencil, and it's a little fine, there's a little bit of seepage, but it works quite well. Now, you should actually mark, if you're planning to put the stencil back on, where the top is. You can just put a little mark on the stencil. I didn't do that, so it took me a while to figure out which one goes where. And off camera, I did actually use a makeup sponge and sponge that shimmery goodness through there. And then I found that wasn't quite enough, so I ended up using a paintbrush and putting it on. I tried tinting the shimmery goodness that violet color as well, and I didn't like that, so I ended up rubbing that off. So here's what it looked like, and it really, you lost that, the dream catcher. It kind of faded into the background because the background is not dark enough. On my Joy one, the background was very dark, so when I put the shimmery goodness stuff, it really popped. So I thought about painting the dream catcher purple, but that wasn't going to work for me. So then it finally dawned, after giving it a good night's sleep, I'm just using that violet color diluted and a liner brush, and I'm very painstakingly painting all the spaces in between. And while this was a bit of a piddly little job, it totally made the dream catcher pop. So it was well worth it. Now, to avoid having to do this, so if you know where the dream catcher is going or whatever stencil is, you can make sure that you put darker paint up there when you're adding paint. And then you can avoid that step. So I cut out some circles, and I didn't have a punch this size because I just wanted to put out the word dream. So I cut out circles to get the size right, and then I decide, instead of gluing those circles on, I'm just going to go right onto the canvas, and I'm using a white Stabilo to do that because I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to the white will blend easier. I don't want the black Stabilo. One of my previous videos, it made a mess. It activated and made the color that I was using very muddy, and I didn't like the look. So I thought, okay, I'm not going to use the black. I'm going to use the white. So I'm placing these stencils that I got from Recollections, and if I can find the link to something similar, I will put that in the description box. I love the size of these. So I am using this with archival ink, and I'm stamping. Now, while I love the size of these letters, they're kind of a grunge alphabet, and often I don't like that so much. Now, this second one had a flower there. If you go back in the video, there was a black flower that just happened to have been stamped exactly right in the middle. Well, when I stamped the letter, you could not really see it because it was on black. So I wiped off the letter, and I'm just put some white gesso on there, and then I'm just adding a little bit of the green and a little bit of that violet color and white just to pretend that was the background. And now I'll be able to stamp a letter on there, and it'll be able to be visible. So, if you don't know what's happening, white gesso cures all. And isn't the last time you're going to see me pull out white gesso in this canvas. So here, except for under the R, I basically kept the background that was there because I thought, you know, I like that background. I can shade around the outside of the circles and make them pop and stand up from the background. I'm just going to leave that. So here I'm using the violet color and I'm shading around the outside. And of course, I've got the white Stabilo and a darker color, so the color is actually getting muted when I activate it. So I grab the baby wipe and I rub off the white Stabilo. I thought I was being so smart. And I grab my black Stabilo this time because it won't matter with what I'm doing. Because I think I switched to black right away. And I'm just going to trace the circle around the letters that are already there. So now you see about how I pretty much made this canvas 3 times over, I feel. But you never know what challenges it's going to give you. So now I'm going to use the acrylic float technique, and I'm using black, and I'm going around the outside of these circles. And that is so it will separate the circles from the background and make the letters stand out. Now I left the background underneath the letters, the color of the page, because one, I love those colors. And two, I didn't want the letters to be as white and compete with the dream catcher. So that was part of my decision making, why I didn't do it, didn't paint them white. Now, because I don't know what else to do, I'm just going to edge the entire canvas. Now, my plan is to pop this into an 8 by 10 frame, but it can be displayed on an easel or a plate rack. So I've decided that the word dream is not showing up enough. So I grab some white paint and I'm giving it one coat so you can still see the texture and you can still see some of the colors come through. Now again, because I don't want it white because I don't want it to compete with the dream catcher. So as you can see, once it's dry, you're still getting some of that violet tone coming through. Now I'm going to grab my script stamp and stamp through the circle just to put some script in the background. Now I could have used my plum archival ink if I had wanted to. You can use whatever color you want. So I'm cautiously optimistic now that I've solved all the problems that there are going to be. So this time I decided instead of archival ink, I'm going to use my acrylic paints, and I'm stamping those letters for, yes, maybe the 3rd time. And I went with the paint because I wanted it to be bolder. I did hesitate there, and I was thinking maybe I should use my Versamark and do some embossing powder and make these letters embossed. But I didn't want that to compete with the shimmery goodness. But that's definitely something you're going to see me doing in an upcoming video, I'm sure. Of course, I made a mess here, so very quickly with a baby wipe, I get rid of it. And if your acrylic underneath it if it's acrylic and it's completely dry, you can get away with that without too much of trouble. And then because I just couldn't leave the grunge lettering alone, I needed to touch it up and make it a little less grungy. I just touch it up with diluted or thinned out black paint in my liner brush. I thought about outlining the letters with my white Uniball Signo or using my fine liner bottle. Then I'd use the float technique, and I'm putting some of that purple. I want to bring a little bit more of that purple to the inside of the circle just to make it pop a little bit more. Now, if you don't know how to do the float technique or you don't want to do it, you can use watercolor crayons and then activate them. And because it was a little too dark, then I'm also adding just a little bit of white, again with the float technique, just to highlight those circles. And I really like how that, it was a little thing, but it really worked well. I'm letting it dry in between and then just adding it, making it a little bit brighter each time. Now in the picture you can't see how lovely that shimmery goodness is on the dream catcher and the feathers, but when you catch it on the side, it just glows and shimmers. It's really spectacular. So I'm just splattering with white, and then I think I splatter again with the violet as well. And that's just kind of the finishing touch. It's like a spritz of perfume at the end, right after you're all dressed. So I'm deciding, I'm thinking, am I done? Am I done? And I decide I want to add a little bit more dimension to those circles. And I get out my fine liner bottle with diluted black paint. And you know, sometimes I can go and do this and it seems effortless. And this time it fought me every step of the way. I kept making mistakes and having to clean up the mess. And I'm not trying to be perfect, but it was, yeah. Sometimes our art fights us. This was definitely the case. But in the end, I think it was well worth it. I love this background. It looks so great when I pop it into a frame. And my mind is already going to what the next one in the series is going to be. Any suggestions? So here are some pictures and some close-ups of the canvas. I hope you learned a few ways in this video on how to troubleshoot when it doesn't quite go the way you plan it to go. And I hope you realize that even, you know, somebody that's has done mixed media for several years, sometimes it doesn't go smooth. I hope you give this a try. If you do, please leave it in a message, give me a comment, join my Facebook group, All Things Mixed Media Creative Katie, and I will see you for the next video. Bye for now.